Welcome back, guys. My name is Patrick.
My name's Mike.
And this is the Fanatics and Edmonton Oilers podcast, episode 3. Today we are talking all NHL trade deadline. We're going to focus on the Oilers' goaltending, defense, and forwards leading up into next Monday's trade deadline. Let's start with goalie talk today. So right now, Mikko Koskinen is boasting a .927 save percentage over the last 13 games. He has looked spectacular, the best we've ever seen him as an Edmonton Oiler. I think it's safe to say the Oilers can count on Mikko Koskinen as their number one goalie for the rest of the way. I said in a video that I released yesterday that I would like to see the Oilers pick up a veteran backup goaltender, spending something like a third-round pick or down in value. Obviously, the Oilers aren't going to go for anybody that costs a first or a second-round pick. That's too much to give up for what could potentially be a backup goaltender. I'm a little worried about Stuart Skinner. Yes, maybe he could come up and do the job. Maybe my fears are unfounded, but I think it puts unfair pressure on him to perform. I'd rather have Koskinen and another guy brought in. I don't trust Mike Smith right now. He's looked good here and there, but he hasn't shown me anything consistency-wise that would give me confidence going into the playoffs. What do you think, Mike?
So, in regards to Mike Smith, there's got to be, or there must have been some conversations, especially in the last couple of weeks after this last, comeback of his that was crash and burn yet again. I wonder if there's been talk with Ken Holland and Mike Smith in regards to a couple things. One, is there a way that you can dump Smith's contract and send him down to Arizona, right? Or does he go and say, hey, you know what, I'm 40 years old, I've had a good run, and does he just retire and then organize and look at his options? I know it kind of puts $2.2 million left on the table, but I'm sorry, if I'm the Edmonton Oilers, he is not part of your goaltending tandem next year, or I don't want him to step foot on the Oilers' ice the rest of this year. He's just too... his most consistent play has been his inconsistency, right? And how much more time can you give a supposed veteran goaltender that just unfortunately has only been able to put 4 or 5 really good games together and 12 really shitty games together this year?
Yeah, no, the Oilers have to find a way to get rid of Mike Smith, whether it's retirement, you put him in Bakersfield, trade him. None of the options are easy, I know, but we know Stuart Skinner is going to be in the Oilers tandem next year. He requires waivers to be sent down. He's looked NHL ready. Stuart Skinner is going to be in the tandem next year. It's just a question of who his partner is going to be. Do the Oilers maybe re-sign Mikko Koskinen? See how the rest of the year goes. I mean, if he can keep this consistency up.
So let's have this conversation, because this is something that I've kind of thought about too. Is I think the biggest thing for Oilers fans, just me being a fan included, is the ungodly contract that was given to Mikko Koskinen.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is not his fault. Not his fault.
It's not his fault.
Yeah.
It's not his fault at all. And I'm not saying that. The fan base really has taken to him. The rally cry from the boys has been great because they have had his back. Do you get rid of that? Right? Or do you bring him back in a capacity of giving him another year or maybe 2, but giving it at a little bit more of a amenable contract, right? Do you do $2 million? I know we all have wanted a fresh face, but really, who else is out there that could come and take? Because we're both in agreement. I think Stuart Skinner still is the goaltender of the future for the Edmonton Oilers. But if he isn't, then where do we go to next? And tying into the trade deadline, I remember, what a little GM of the Oilers did back in 2006 and brought in a guy named Dwayne Rollison. Is there a Dwayne Rollison type player? Is that a Holtby? Is that some kind of veteran presence? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's where my fear comes from, right? Because say you go Koskinen and Skinner into the playoffs, because the Oilers have been much better under Jay Woodcroft. Even games they've lost, they've been in it. Yes, they've had a couple stinkers along the way, but it's been a crazy schedule. You're going to have games where they're tired. Going back to Skinner, that's why I want to bring in a proven backup for Koskinen. I'm fine. Koskinen's given me enough confidence that I want to give him the reins and give him the chance to prove himself there. So I'd bring in a proven backup for the remainder of this year in the playoffs, and then see what happens in the summer. Like, there are goaltenders you can go after, like Ville Husso, I'm sure is going to be available in St. Louis. There's going to be I think there's like
and if he's not, Binnington might be, right?
Binnington, yeah.
There's a lot of up-and-coming young goaltenders, and as long as we have the right GM in place, whether that's Holland or whether that's, like we talked about before, maybe Keith Gretzky gets a shot.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
After this season. Looking at a veteran goaltender, like, who do you go after? Do you have a top 2 veteran goaltenders that you would be looking at?
Well, we'll have to see if Braden Holtby is available. I think I was trying to, like I said, I was trying to keep the price tag like 3rd-round pick or lower. So Braden Holtby might probably at least cost you a 2nd-round pick. I don't think he's a 1st-round pick goalie. If you're looking at someone like an Alexander Georgiev out of New York, he's probably going to cost you a 1st or a 2nd-round pick. There was a lot of talk about Anton Forsberg, but apparently Matt Murray's having health issues, so they want to hang on to Forsberg for the rest of the year. So I don't think Forsberg's going to be an option for the Oilers anymore. I don't know, do you bring in a Korpisalo as strictly a backup, but is Korpisalo a better option than Skinner, though?
Well,
right?
and that's my thing right now is like, you go after Georgiev. I love that idea. There is going to be more that is going to be needed to get a Georgiev. But then again, you're in that same kind of conundrum. Then next year, is Georgiev a better player this year than what Mikko Koskinen's been? Mikko Koskinen last night now has won his 20th game. And like that's not an easy task for a goaltender in the NHL, especially on an inconsistent team like the Oilers.
As far as another backup goaltender that could be an option, I did do a look at Martin Jones. He's marginally, like, he's right in there with Mike Smith numbers-wise, but you are looking at a guy that not so long ago was a number 1 goaltender with the San Jose Sharks. If it ends up falling on Martin Jones, obviously Martin Jones isn't going to carry the Oilers to the Stanley Cup. But realistically, I don't know if the Oilers are even really going to be a Stanley Cup team this year. I just like to see this team get there, win a couple rounds at least, or win a round. Just get past that first round, like end that stigma that we can't get out of the first round. This is a year they could do that. They're playing well enough to do that. Maybe Mikko Koskinen and Martin Jones get you there, or maybe you should just go with Mikko Koskinen and Stuart Skinner, but give him the playoff experience if you get there. I don't know.
It's like I said. I think we've beat this goaltending thing so hard for so many years.
Yeah,
it just keeps going on and on and on.
It's the never-ending topic.
I think the one thing that we need to end on with this segment is the fact that you got to give Mikko his props this year. Like, he's played on an inconsistent team, and we've been riddled by injury again this year. You know what? Props to Mikko Koskinen for as much as we shit on him and for as inconsistent as he has been. These last 12 games, like, I'm not saying contract extension. I'm not saying we work him in, but it definitely needs to be a conversation to be had.
Well, and there's been one thing. They've been playing better defense in front of him, and his numbers have gotten better.
Shocking!
Weird.
Shocking how that happens, right?
So, yeah, just to close out our goalie segment here, got to get rid of Mike Smith some way, somehow. Bakersfield trade.
Would you ever have thought that that's what we were going to be talking about with 24 games left?
Yeah, I know. I think Mike Smith's got to go. Either go with Koskinen and Skinner, or you find a way to bring in a veteran backup, go with Koskinen and that new backup. So next up, guys, we're going to take a look at the forwards. I'm kind of the belief that the Oilers don't really need to add much at forward. We've talked about possibly maybe bringing Dylan Holloway up. What are your thoughts on Dylan Holloway, Mike?
Well, you know what? Kind of like what we had talked about earlier about Stuart Skinner. I really think that, he's really starting to fly down in the AHL. Bakersfield, he's really kind of rounding out his game. Seems like he's getting back to form. But I really think personally that I think he stays down there. You leave him down there for the rest of this year. He gets some playoff prowess with Bakersfield this year, and then he goes and has a hell of an offseason, and then he comes in to training camp next year, bigger, stronger, ready to go, ready to fight for that mid-six position that I know he's probably going to go after. But that's my thoughts. I don't think we're doing him any favors by bringing him into a position like we would a Stuart Skinner by bringing him up here and putting him in a mid-six position, or... I'm sorry, you're not just going to go and throw him up on the wing with Connor, playing against all the best teams players in the NHL. I don't think that. I think that's defeating the purpose because the AHL is not the NHL. I think that, you look at the rise of Ryan McLeod over this course of this season, Tippett kind of just, tippy-toed with him. Woodcroft, knowing the player so well, really knows how to put these young players in the proper positions for success. He skated through 4 Tampa Bay players last night, rang it off the crossbar. Like, I thought it was Connor. And then I looked at the jersey and I was like, what the hell?
I didn't see anyone predicting that Ryan McLeod could play in the top 6. Like, after
we were talking third line center.
Well, that, yeah, and after he was like sent down, what was it, like 3-4 games into the year? I saw a bunch of people, we're not going to see McLeod for the rest of the year. Well, not only did he come back, he stayed, and he's proven that he should be staying. He's basically been a top 6 forward for the Oilers. I don't think he's like a top 6 option going forward. You're probably going to see him more likely on the third line, but to know that he can move up and down the lineup as needed, that's fantastic.
Well, that's only because of injury. Right?
Yeah, injury, yeah.
I'm sorry. There's 2 guys on this team right now that I think that, even though they bring some grit and determination, I think that they really, if Ken Holland could find somebody else to take their place, I would. One being Kyler Yamamoto. His trade value is never going to be any bigger than it is right now. He's scoring some goals. He's just so damn small. I get it, fans. He's tenacious. Everybody likes him. The Yamo, whatever. I get it. But at the same time, he's just so small. He is not, a Theon Fleury. He's not a Daniel Briere. I don't think he's ever going to get to that elite level. I think healthy, I just don't see why he's in the top 6. I think on a better team, he would not be in the top 6, and I would move Kyler Yamamoto. Who do you bring in? I really don't know. There's lots of different, other veteran options that may or may not happen. The other person that I would look at, and this is out of left field, is Warren Foegele. I think Warren Foegele came in and Dave Tippett screwed that whole understanding of what Warren Foegele could bring to this club. And I think it's really gone to show is that I think out of all the players that Woodcroft has been, really having an impact on, I think the least impact he's had on, and just my personal opinion, is Warren Foegele, because he still hasn't done shit in my eyes. Like, I really don't see him fitting in. Am I out of left field there?
Apparently there's talk that Foegele could be on the move come trade deadline. There are teams calling about him. I liked Foegele at certain points. I like his ability to move up and down the lineup. I don't know if he's ever really just been utilized properly on this team. He seems like he'll go up for one game and then get pulled back.
But it's just out of sorts. And I think Woodcroft has really tried. He's put him in the top 6, and he's pretty much laid an egg. Like, I'm sorry, just like Yamo. I don't care how many pucks you retrieve. Put the fucking puck in the net. Why can't you score more goals? I get it. His contract doesn't negate him to, be a 30 or 40 goal scorer. But I'm sorry, playing on the wing with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, my expectations are a little bit higher of a, 5'10" forward. I get it. I just think he's too small. And going into the playoffs, he's going to get exposed like he was last year, which means once they start not calling any penalties, because we all know that's what's going to start happening, I think Yamamoto gets eviscerated and he's erased from that quotient. He's just not big enough. If you can go and take Warren Foegele out and you could take a Yamamoto out and bring in, maybe it's some depth. Like, who are some of the names that are out there that you're hearing right now?
Jake DeBrusk has a trade request.
Dude, and we've said this ad nauseum. I fucking love this kid. Jake DeBrusk is exactly who I think an Edmonton Oiler would be. He's from here. The way he plays, and I think having the tutelage of a Woodcroft moving forward, guys like DeBrusk that, really is, I think that Foegele and DeBrusk are in the same kind of situations with their clubs right now. DeBrusk is that guy that he's kind of in that mid-6, kind of getting a look here and there, but Boston's kind of like, well, I don't know. And the Oilers are the same thing with Foegele, right? Do you have to add anything? I don't think so. I think it would be a straight-across move. And I think Foegele going back to the East and DeBrusk coming home, I think that would light a fire under Jake DeBrusk. And I'm sorry, I really think that it would be a huge thing for the Edmonton Oilers.
I'd love to get Jake DeBrusk personally. A lot of people bring up the problem. I mean, it's a real issue. Like his qualifying offer, I think it's almost $5 million. It's a little under that, but if you move certain players out, there's ways to make it work. Does Jake DeBrusk see a jolt in production? Like, is he someone that would produce more with a Leon Draisaitl? Is he someone that would produce more with a Connor McDavid? Are you going to get better production out of him than you would get out of a Kyler Yamamoto or a Warren Fogle?
100%.
I think so. He's a bigger body. He's not going to get pushed around as easily. Like Mike said,
dude, he's been on a Boston club that's been a bunch of bullies for the last decade, right? He knows how to take care of himself. He's strong on his skates. He's strong on his stick. He's not afraid to throw his weight around. Coming into this last week, we got basically 7 days to go before we play Colorado after the trade deadline. I'm going to be shocked to see it. I think there's going to be some moves. I just don't know if Ken Holland's the GM that would have the balls to make those moves, especially ones that we're talking about.
Well, I think with the way the Oilers are playing right now, they deserve to see some additions made. This is a team that's made a real change under Jay Woodcroft. They're getting better. They're in the playoff hunt. I'd give this team some help. So basically, just to close out this forward segment, if the Oilers can bring in someone like Jake DeBrusk for the top 9, that'd be something we'd look at. Otherwise, I'd probably leave the forward ranks alone unless you can make a massive change, because I think they're okay as they are. If you can bring in a big upgrade, do that. But if there's no big upgrade, probably just leave it alone for this year and focus on goaltending and defense. So for our last segment today, we're going to take a look at the defense for the Oilers. There's a few options they have. I've done a profile look at Justin Braun with the Philadelphia Flyers. Right shot D, $1.8 million. We know the Oilers have been heavily scouting the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he's a good option for them. Seattle Kraken, Carson Soucy. I believe he plays the left side, but I think he can play the left and the right. He's around $2.75 million, I believe, is his contract. He's on a couple-year contract. I think he'd be a good option for the Oilers to look at. Who's some targets you want to look at, Mike?
Well, this one's a tough one, right? We all pretty much know that, again, the outlier on defense that I think is Tyson Barrie. I think, like you said, he's looked great under Woodcroft, or looked better under Woodcroft.
Yeah, better under, not great.
That he's been playing his game. He's been helping the power play, yet still not shooting, which is driving me insane. Who could you get? Justin Braun, I like that you did that on that piece on him, because he's a big body. I like what he would bring, but like Soucy out of Seattle. See, I like Alexiak as well. Regardless of what side they play on, like I just think you need to show up your defense. Like you were saying, what does our prospects look like moving forward here?
Well, we got like Niemelainen, Broberg, Sam Marukov. These guys are all left shot D. I think right side D is where the Oilers should focus on. If you're bringing in somebody on an expiring contract at the deadline for the left side, sure. I mean, any help the Oilers can get, especially in the top 4, would be welcome help. But I think going forward, the right side is where the Oilers should focus on. I think they're weaker. They have Cody Ceci, Tyson Barrie, and Evan Bouchard there. But Bouchard's been struggling. Cece's been good all year. He's been pretty consistent. And Tyson Barrie's been hit and miss. Right?
Well, here's another name that we can throw out there. Break your knees, Giordano. Like Giordano's sitting there wasting away down in Seattle. Could he come in and be a person? I know there's a lot of teams that have had interest. Even
he's going to get moved somewhere.
Yeah, but he is going to get moved somewhere. What about Travis Hamonic? Like, again, he's not one of those guys that'll just oh my God, it's Travis Hamonic. But could he bring that consistency to the back end?
He was a player that the Vancouver Canucks were hoping was going to play in their top 4 this year. He hasn't played much of anything because he's had family and health issues. So I don't know how much help he would be this year. He's consistently been a good defenseman in the past, but I'm not sure how he'd look this year, though.
So moving forward, as far as defense goes, I still think, I really like the guy out of Philly, and like you said, it looks like that may be where the trend is going since of all the scouts and stuff that have been at the games, the Philly games. Defense is where I think it gets a little bit more interesting come trade deadline, because that's the chess pieces that everybody's looking for, because the officiating is so shitty in the playoffs. And you need guys that can play defense. That's what I'm saying is that we got beat last year by the third and fourth lines of Winnipeg and an absolute stud of a goaltender that stood on his head. Whereas we got mediocre goaltending. We could score some goals, but we couldn't defend in our own zone to save our lives. Our 5-on-5 play in the playoffs last year was absolutely non-existent. So, I'm hoping that we can take these next, whatever it is, 20 some odd games here and really keep hitting the ground running and get healthy. See what this team can look like healthy. If we had to go into this, into the playoffs with our defense, it wouldn't be the most ideal. But, I wouldn't hate it either. You also have a guy down, in the ranks in Niemelainen that could come up and play some good minutes.
Well, I think he'll be back up after he has his baby with his
wife. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, he's a dad now. And so,
did they have the baby?
Oh, yeah. Okay. They had the baby and everything. That's why I'm thinking is that, all of a sudden, if you can throw Niemelainen into the mix here, moving into Tuesday or Thursday's game, man, I think that just makes us tougher to play against. I think with the tenaciousness that he brings, and I think he had an assist already, which is better than, some of the other guys on our defensive squad. Anything that can ease the mind of Evan Bouchard, who seems to really have been struggling as of late. Better now in the last couple games here. He seems to have found his legs. I don't know if that. It really seems that when he had the stomach flu, that it really kicked him in the ass. So I hope this is the true to form, and he's starting to come back and make some better decisions. Well, especially after him probably getting a little bit of a what have you in the dressing room after that horrible, lazy end of the first period last night. But he did come back and he played a decent game in the second and the third. He wasn't a liability. The fact that they were able to hold off and play through that 5-on-3. Defense is a tough one. Just like goaltending, right? Defense is a tough one. It's kind of hard when your coach that you wish that you had all year is the coach that you've had now the last 15 games. And to see how the team is actually playing like a team now, it makes it really hard to say, okay, well, who is it that you want to bring in? Like I said, I totally agree with you. I think that, the likes of the Klingbergs and all these guys that aren't on the table anymore, unless you're going to be able to, miraculously do some kind of like a blockbuster deal, I think Giordano's going to go out east, to be honest, because again, Colorado can't get everyone. The one thing I'd like to say to the fan base is, you know what? If you're going to the games and you can afford to go to the games, open your goddamn mouth and start cheering for the club. It's the quietest arena I've ever heard out of any game that we've watched all year. It's absolutely asinine that if we're this passionate that everybody just sits there like bumps on a log when they go to the game live. And that's just my 2 cents.
Well, guys, I think we'll wrap up there. Basically, going to the trade deadline, Jake DeBrusk, maybe if you can up front, maybe an upgrade to the bottom 6. I think the Oilers should focus on defense and goaltending. Justin Braun, Carson Soucy, possible options. We know they've been looking at Philly and Seattle. Maybe a Martin Jones out of Philly. Not the greatest option, I know. I'm not saying, oh my God, let's go get Martin Jones, but he's a possibility. There's Korpisalo, Holtby, maybe a bit Georgiev. There's guys out there. The Oilers can realistically land any of them. I don't know. We might end up seeing Koskinen and Skinner as their best option, but we'll see what happens. Mike and I are going to have a trade deadline show on the 21st following everything that happens, so we'll be here to discuss it with you guys. So have a great week, guys. Maybe we'll see some trades along the way. I'll have plenty of content for you on the channel. Thanks for coming and checking us out. My name's Patrick.
My name's Mike.
You've been watching the Oilers Fanatic. Thanks for being a fan. Take care, guys. I'll see you soon.